July 17th, 2023. This is the S&P 500 2000 tick chart on the eFutures Mini on the NinjaTrader 8 platform. There was only one piece of economic news that came out today, but it didn't seem like it really moved the market. It was at 5:30 a.m. Pacific Standard, the Empire State Manufacturing Index. Now, as much as this chart looks like there might be setups, I didn't find very many clean setups. I only found 3 setups, and only 2 that I thought were actually, worth trading. One was a little iffy, and the volatility and volume today were actually quite low. It's noticeably lower than other days just because how long it takes for each candle to close out, as well as how many candles are actually printed, was a lot less. So this is the pre-market highs and lows. They didn't really come into play and didn't really matter that much. And overall, the market was just exhibiting a kind of a very, very slow, gradual grind up. So as you can see, there's one leg up, pulls back, and a second leg up. And I thought that was a measured move here. That's where I kind of set up the second possible trade. And then it just kind of stayed within this channel here. And I'm going to go through this rather quickly because there weren't very many setups. You can look down at the descriptions below. You can see where I timestamped where I thought I saw setups. So in the pre-market, I don't trade the pre-market, but you can look around and they technically are second entry longs, but none of them I thought were high probability and it wouldn't have mattered anyways. The first setup I do see is a new high here, and I had this orange panel drawn going up because it had one touch, two touch, and when I touched this third one here, that's where I thought I saw the setup, and then it had one touch, two touch, technically a third touch. But I saw the new high here, first entry long. This is a second entry long. I actually thought this was a pretty decent trade or a decent setup because you have a very bullish close on this signal bar. It's also not only a second entry long from here, first entry long, second entry long, it's also a failed second entry short because you have a new low here, bounces off the EMA, it makes a first entry short, bounces off the EMA again. EMA is holding prices and it breaks down below, but it immediately reverses up and closes on the high. The problem, well, there actually was no problem. This setup I think is worth taking a trade. Unfortunately, it would have been a trade that did not work out because you actually have one tick higher, and if you're going for like 6 ticks, you don't get filled out here because right here, the high here is 45, 40, 75. So you actually need, you took one tick higher, it actually 45, 41, and you need to get out, or you need prices to get up to 45, 42 and 50. And up here, this is 45, 42, 25. So it just barely touched your exit and came back down. If you went for just one tick, 4 points, you might have gotten filled. Actually, you technically would have gotten filled. But if you want to get 5 ticks to ensure you 1 full point, it's hard to say you would have actually gotten filled. Then it reverses down. So I think this is actually a high probability setup that just happened not to work out because it had several things going for it. It's bouncing off the ascending trend line. It has two key setups: a first entry long, second entry long, so that's 1, and a failed second entry short, that's 2. Plus EMA is holding, that's 3. And technically, this ascending channel could be a 4th one. Even if you didn't have the channel, you have 3 things going for you. Then prices continue chopping. It's completely disregarding the trading range formed by the pre-market highs and lows. If you look in here, yes, technically there are a bunch of second entries, but they're not high probability second entries. So I skipped pretty much all of it, left and stepped away from this noise right here. It was pretty much a big test of patience today because it's hard to, especially if you waited for a couple hours to not believe you see a setup and want to jump on it, even if it's second entry, but not a high probability. Not only was the setups not that many, it was a slow, very deliberate grind up. So you clearly know prices are moving up, but it's hard to really trust that the second entries will work because whenever there was a pullback or a second entry formed or set up, either the highs or lows to exit out of were very tight, maybe less than 2 points. And to just scalp out 1 point, you could. But if you're trying to go for 2 points or maybe at least 6 ticks to ensure you have a full point, it was hard to find a good clean setup. Now the second setup I saw was right here. There's a new high here. It actually completed the measure move. So I saw one big leg here, pulls back in the second leg. So when this first leg formed, I actually drew the second one in anticipation of some kind of reaction up here at the completion of the second measured move. I saw a new high here, It's getting forced down. It's first entry long. It breaks down below the EMA, makes a second entry long. And so in real time, you see this, and you're wondering if it's actually going to break through this EMA and upwards. And I actually had this descending trend line coming down here, and I drew the bottom here. This could be considered a small overshoot. So I thought it's maybe an overshoot, one push up, and a second push up. Now it's hard for me to understand, or not understand, hard for me to convince myself to take a short here, even though I saw a failed second entry long here, because this isn't good enough signal bar for a second entry long. But then to see a failed second entry long when this candle prints, it's also hard to take a short because you're counter trend trading, as well as even though this bearish bar closed very clean, very nice, the problem is it's an inside bar to this big bullish candle. So you know the sellers, the bears, did not have enough power to push down and below the low limit of this candle. On top of that, if you were to put your entry one tick below here, you don't really have that much room to scalp out to the bottom of this guy. On top of that, if this actually holds true, it has 1, 2, 3 confirmations, it could touch a fourth time and bounce back up. So there's too many conflicting ideas here, even though I know that it just came off the top of this measured move. And you would think there was going to be a correction. However, the trend of the day and the character of the day had been bullish. So let's see what happens when you, well, I already know what happens, but when you see this, it looks like it would have filled you. It would have made you a little bit nervous because it creates a micro double bottom and you think it might bounce up. And here it would have completely filled you and you would have gotten your scalp. However, in real time, you don't know that. When prices bounce off the bottom of this ascending channel, and I did play with this throughout the day, and this is what I ultimately ended up with, this one touch, two touch, three touch. Or you can count this as pretty much 1, 2, at least 2, and maybe a third one here. But I counted it as the fourth touch. However, when this fourth touch occurred, there's no setup to feel comfortable taking an entry. There is, you could argue there is a higher low right here. Even though there's like first entry, second entry, technically this is a third entry long, but it bounced off this bottom of the ascending channel, which gives you confidence. And then there is a kind of like a higher low confirmation, but I just didn't feel, well, all that comfortable taking it yet. And it looked like it would have worked. Of course, you don't know that in real time. When prices continue chopping, I did see a new high here, first entry long, second entry long, right here. Technically, this is the third entry long, so the trade is no longer valid. The second entry long, you would have taken it here. You probably would have gotten filled, but then you wouldn't have gotten the scalp. It would have come down, and this green candle, it's very tricky, would have stopped, well, it would have stopped me out for sure, because my stop would have been one tick below here. So I saw this, I wasn't sure, and I just left it alone. Prices continue moving up. Just kind of fast forward. This the third setup that I saw, and probably the only other setup that I thought was a high probability trade was right here. There's a new high here. It didn't quite make it to the other side of the range, excuse me, the other side of the channel. You have a first entry long right here, pulls up, comes back down, makes a second entry long right here. This is a fantastic signal bar. It's bouncing off the EMA. EMA did have a break through here, but then it did bounce up here. And from here, there is enough room to make it and clear yourself of a scalp before it hits the recent high. Didn't take this trade mainly because I wasn't at my desk. I actually had to get up for a moment. And when I came back, I was already looking at something like this. And I actually saw this after the fact. But in real time, well, it's hard to say after the fact, but in real time, I think this is a trade I would have tried to jump on. I put it one tick above here and gone for a quick 5 or 6 tick scalp, not to be too greedy, because if you try to go reaching for 2, you run the risk of hitting the top. And even though this is the recent high, there's nothing that says the price couldn't turn down earlier. It doesn't necessarily mean it has to go up and touch this recent high. It's just an indication that when you're getting close to it, you have to be careful, maybe take your profits there because it had trouble breaking through that recent high before. So to go for 2 full ticks, you are pressing against that recent high. So most likely I would have just gone for, excuse me, not 2 full ticks, 2 full points. I would have just gone for 5 ticks or 6 ticks and get 1 point out of it. Prices continue moving up, and it's just kind of creating a lot of noise now. You do have a new high here, first entry long, second entry long. This is a terrible signal bar. And this is getting really close to the end of the day now. And as you can see, price action does kind of get more volatile because people are closing out their positions. But overall, when you look at the entire chart and a larger time frame, it looks kind of obvious that you would see that prices are clearly moving up. But when you zoom in, I didn't see that many setups, so it was definitely a test of patience because if you try to take any of these second entries, either long or short, they may or may not have worked out, but then you would be lowering your success rate. I know I would be because I wouldn't be playing with more, I guess, more probability of a successful trade. It would just be a little more haphazard. But yeah, it was kind of a sit on hands type of day. It was very slow, and hopefully the rest of the week something better comes out of it. I know tomorrow the core retail sales and the retail sales numbers are coming out, and then I think on Thursday the unemployment claims always comes out at 5:30. They maybe have a little bit more price action, but this is the summertime, so price action in general through the years consistently slow down around the July, early August timeframe because a lot of people are taking vacation. So hopefully that was helpful.